As the child of Alice Evelyn Hazen and Rush Hazen, Evelyn Hazen lived a very sheltered life in Knoxville. She was essentially an only child, her only siblings being at least a decade older than her. While her father doted on his youngest daughter, her siblings were jealous of his affections for Evelyn and shunned her. When Evelyn was 14, the private school she attended was shut down, forcing her to continue her studies at the then-fledgling University of Tennessee. While there, her beauty attracted the attention of several young men, including football superstar Russ Lindsay and Ralph Scharringhaus, both who vied for her love. As America entered World War I, Russ was sent to fight for his country. Ralph followed suit, but not before tricking Evelyn into believing that Russ had an STD that could harm her and her children. Evelyn believed his lie, taking Russ out of the picture, also confirming that Evelyn had no knowledge of sexual matters. Ralph took advantage of this. While stationed in nearby Camp Jackson, he wrote letters to Evelyn, a habit he would keep up for over a decade. One of his letters requested Evelyn to marry him. She agreed, but when the two went to procure a marriage license, they found the bureau to be closed. Ralph told her that, a few words made little difference anyway, that if I would give myself to him, we would be married in the sight of God. Evelyn reluctantly gave in, later recalling, I had expected a sacred, beautiful thing. That first experience was ghastly, totally lacking in any gentleness that he had hinted at before. Ralph had no intention of ever buying a marriage license. For the next 15 years, as Evelyn pressured him to marry her, Ralph would calmly explain that they couldn't support a family with his income and that they must wait just a bit longer, while still insisting she owed him his marriage rights. Evelyn resisted his sexual advantages, but would occasionally give in, hoping to quell his lust and urge to convince him to marry her. It was during this time that she discovered Ralph's true perverted nature. In regards to sex, she called him an avid extremist who gave himself over to nauseating physical abandonment, that he was conscious of nothing but himself. But Ralph did indeed have plenty of money. Between 1917 and 1932, he attended parties and movies, took up drinking and smoking, bought new cars, and went on numerous vacations. His father, Edward Scharringhaus, was one of the owners of a prosperous wholesale clothing company, a position which Ralph himself took after his return from the war. Evelyn never saw a cent of his fortune, working as a teacher just to make ends meet. The rumor quickly began to spread that it was Evelyn who was refusing to marry Ralph. Evelyn didn't dare tell the truth and risked the public finding about her premarital sex. She urged Ralph to set the rumor straight, but he refused, knowing that Evelyn was trapped in a cage of deceit. He did, however, buy her an engagement ring, forcing her to wear it on her right hand to avoid any actual obligation. He also suggested that she spend time with other men, hoping to gain sympathy, making it appear as if she were cheating on him. Evelyn was not the only victim of hearsay, however, as she began receiving anonymous tips in the late 1920s from people claiming to have seen Ralph with another woman, one Elizabeth Goforth. Evelyn was slow to act on these calls, for while she harbored suspicions about Ralph for years, she still naively believed that he truly intended on marrying her eventually. But when she did finally confront Ralph about the affair in 1932, he exploded in a fit of rage and fled to live with his aunt in Covington, Kentucky. Distraught, Evelyn wrote him one last long, rambling letter. He replied with a short note with the phrase, "The only solution is to stop." The rumors began to flow thicker than ever in light of Ralph's sudden departure. Evelyn was fired from her job as a teacher due to the vicious slander that had been spread about her. She received another anonymous tip advising her to purchase a gun, and she complied. Frustrated, Evelyn hired a legal team including General Wesley Travis Kennerly, who acted as her lawyer, and Stephens L. Blakely, her attorney. Their plan was to sue Ralph for a breach of contract to marry. Before she could take action, however, her father, the only member of her family who understood her plight, died. The rest of her family, convinced that Evelyn was going to kill Ralph, had her committed to Lions View Asylum. During this time, Ralph was free to come roam in Knoxville without fear. However, after a month, Evelyn managed to get in contact with Kennerly, who convinced the warden to free her on the grounds that she wasn't truly insane. Ralph once again fled to Kentucky to avoid a court summons, but was quickly found by Evelyn and her friends, who forced him into a legal battle with the stakes of up to $100,000. On the witness stand, Evelyn fiercely recounted her past 15 years of torment and stress, using Ralph's letters to her as proof. When questioned, she confirmed that she would still marry Ralph for her honor, saying that, "It's all I've ever asked." Meanwhile, Ralph and his witnesses, Mildred Eager and Gertrude Finland, had pieced together a drastic retelling of the events. They claimed that Evelyn had refused to marry Ralph and instead seduced 3 other men, including one of her students, which is odd, considering they also claimed she was never actually a teacher. They painted the picture of a woman desperate enough to go buy a gun, not for defense, but for the murder of Ralph. Evelyn realized that some of her anonymous tipsters had actually been Ralph's spies attempting to set her up, but she couldn't prove this. Instead, Blakely managed to discredit Ralph's witnesses by proving their bias. When asked who was paying the expenses to be in court, they all answered Mr. Scharringhaus. Kennerly's strategy worked, as 11 of the 12 jurors sided with Evelyn, awarding her $80,000, at the time the largest sum won in the state of Kentucky. Her case set a new precedent for future trials. However, despite her temporary elation at being vindicated, Evelyn was still shunned by the Knoxville community, who found her open retelling of events in the courtroom to be improper behavior for a lady. Still jobless, she retired to the Mabry Hazen house, where she took care of her mother and uncle until they passed away. With the exception of a few caretakers and pets, she lived alone for the rest of her life. Eventually, both her and her landmark case were forgotten. She never did see $1 of the money she deserved from Ralph, who would go on to marry his mother's nurse before dying in 1971. Evelyn became paranoid in her old age, claiming to see the ghosts of old friends in her house. In the early 1980s, a group of hooligans slit her dog's throats, prompting her to buy a .32 caliber Colt revolver, which she kept on her at all times until she died of a stroke in 1987. In 1989, the precedent set by Scharringhaus versus Hazen was overturned in Gilbert versus Varks.